the nation there that we haven't mentioned in all of that is the Qataris. Tucker Carlson has said that Qatar are a great ally of America. Meanwhile, other thinkers, including myself, would say actually they're part of the axis of evil, along with Iran and Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah.
It's not just,
and they've been throwing hundreds of millions into America.
It's not just Tucker. I have tremendous respect for Tucker, and Tucker's a serious person. It's not just Tucker, though. It's Washington, D.C. Let's be blunt. Qatari money's flowing through here like crazy. All I will remind people is that when President Trump, when we went to the Middle East to start the trip of Riyadh first, Jerusalem second, Rome third to kick off the first term, we had Mnuchin. We worked on this. The key thing was about stopping terrorist financing, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood and others coming out of the Middle East. The very detailed deal that President Trump had worked out, that Mnuchin was there. We show up in the Middle East. We show up and we understand that Qatar's not prepared to sign it. Hey, and they're not shy by getting up in your face. To me, Qatar is the railhead of the problem, okay, because of their money. They fund the Muslim Brotherhood. They're in league with Turkey, which I think is a big problem right now. They are, I think, helping to finance Turkey's expansion of the, Erdogan is a dangerous guy. And look, the president, I understand that people in the White House totally disagree with this. That's fine. They have their opinion, and President Trump's acting on it. I think do it very smartly. I just keep warning that Qatar did not sign stop financing terror, Muslim Brotherhood and other terrorist
harboring Hamas.
Not just harboring Hamas and underwriting Hamas.
Exactly.
I mean, it's the whole coordination, that Hamas attack, which leads to a whole nother thing that, another unpleasant topic. Which is, how did that take place over 7 or 8 months or a year with Egyptian intelligence, Saudi intelligence, British MI6, which is, by the way, British MI6 is dialed in the Middle East like nobody's business. The CIA, nobody knew about it. Also in Qatar, I'm not just pointing any fingers at Americans. Tony Blair and I think Tony Blair and there's a whole host of people in the United Kingdom are taking Qatar money also, I believe.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and it's disgraceful. We should have nothing to do with them.
Well, you and I are in agreement on that. There are people I respect that come to a different set of have facts, and they come with a different set of things. And I would just tell people, Qatar, there was just a report the other day in the great universities in our country, and I'm sure it's going on in England. The Chinese, I think it's over the last couple of years, the Chinese Communist Party in Qatar put $29 billion invested in the top universities in the United States of America. It's outrageous. I want all that money out. I want all the Saudi money out. I want all the UAE money out. I'm a big proponent that right now, where the world's condition is we have enough pension fund money here, we have enough capital here, that we got to be very careful about having foreign money in the situation, particularly as we're in this tough negotiations in Persia. If you take the arc of instability coming from, let's say, Belarus or Ukraine, that part of the world, through the Balkans, through Turkey, Greece and Turkey, through that part of the Mediterranean, over to Syria, Israel, down through Persia, Iraq, you got Afghanistan, Pakistan, all the way to the Gulf, the Arabian Sea and the Red Sea. That whole arc of instability is, it's already we're in the middle of a major war. And let me be specific. If you go back and look at the beginning of World War II, the military part, not the Spanish Civil War or anything, but from 1939, the invasion of Poland, to June of 1941, the invasion of the German army, the Wehrmacht, in Operation Barbarossa into Russia. Mm-hmm. If you take that, year and a half, almost 2 years, a couple 100,000 people died. Fall of France, fall of the West, Battle of Britain, Dunkirk, North Africa, some things happened in North Africa, even Finland. Let's put Finland in there. A couple 100,000 people. Let's say 400,000 combat casualties, maybe 500,000. Just in Ukraine and in Gaza alone, we're at 1.5 million to 1.7 million right now. I mean, this is much more brutal. But the world, because I'm giving Ian Bremmer's numbers. Ian Bremmer says there's about 800,000 Russians dead or wounded in Ukraine, and they say there's about 500,000, maybe 600,000 total dead and wounded Ukrainians. So you're talking 1.2 million in Ukraine, and then what do you got? Another 40, 50, maybe 100,000 in Gaza. Let's throw it all in. You're talking a massive number. If you look at Ukraine looks like Dresden in 1945. Gaza looks worse than Dresden in 1945. People kind of sit back and say that this is much we're in a much bloodier conflict on the Eurasian landmass right now than at the beginning of World War II. And people just kind of like, oh, well, we may have World War III. The kinetic part of World War III is here. That's why Trump's trying to stop this. You add the possibility of nuclear weapons with the Persians, on top of the fact you have Pakistan and India, right, at the line of control right now in Kashmir, with both nations, I don't know, with 60 to 100 nuclear weapons each. You were talking about in that arc of instability, you could light the world up. And we could be fighting this thing for 50 years. These wars spin out of control. Why? Because of vengeance. And every war accelerates into a war of attrition and eventually a war of annihilation. We're in very dangerous. And that's why I think President Trump he said he's going to be 24 hours. What he's accomplished so far, and even getting a broad framework that we can have discussions and maybe even lay down the weapons, like on May 8th, maybe have a ceasefire for a while in Ukraine, and he moderates what he did because of trying to make a deal with not going after Hamas again with the hostages. What he's doing very smartly, I think, with the mullahs, he's juggling a lot of pieces of this equation, right? I think that's why I think the Russian part and the Russian rapprochement is so important. So when people say, well, he changed his mind the other day, I said, yo, dude, go back and look at the history of the Second World War. They were trying to get accommodation. They're trying to do things. You're trying to avoid these things getting out of control. And people should know we are so close to this thing spinning out of control. It's very dangerous. And that's why I think people ought to back the president.
Given how close it is, are you consoled by the knowing that it's Steve Witkoff, the former real estate mogul?
Here's why I'm. Well, first off, the diplomats have done. Let's pull back for a second, because if you read the New York Times or the Times of London, the Financial Times, and you go to MSNBC or particularly the BBC, who's the fucking worst.
Agreed.
You would have to think that you got to be, a diplomat. Look at where the diplomats have put us. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's none of this happened when Trump was in the first time, because nobody wants to cross him, right? Because they understand he's a savage. They don't want to cross him. So none of this killing was going on when he was there. We've had the diplomats. We had all the Atlantic Council. We had all the pundits that you see on MSNBC and on BBC and this constant thing. And all we got was death and destruction, and darker and farther down a conflict that was spinning out of control. So the last thing I want is a bunch of diplomats trying to negotiate this. What I like about Witkoff is he particularly skilled in every element of this. He's not, however, he's skilled at, he's got the confidence of the guy you need confidence in. That's Donald Trump. Yeah. He is a deal guy. I think he's got a very good feel for this.
You prefer him to Marco Rubio?
I think Secretary Rubio is doing a fantastic job. I think it's a team approach. I think we have Rubio doing other things right now, too. Remember, Rubio's kind of taking a lead in a couple of things. Rubio's the lead guy saying, hey, if we don't see some real movement on this Ukraine ceasefire, we're just walking away and you guys have at it. I think Secretary Rubio is doing an excellent job. I think he's been a great part of the team. I actually think the entire team's come together. I like having Witkoff kind of in the room. And I've actually advised Steve, don't get too bogged down on some of the subsets of the deal. Focus on the overall, the rapprochement with Russia, because that's central. If you get the rapprochement with Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, and Persia all get settled kind of as a subset of that, right? As a condition precedent, those will all somehow be taken care of. And so I think right now what President Trump needs is support and prayers, because we're in a very dangerous situation. And none of this happened on his watch. He stepped into it. I think he's done a magnificent job, if nothing else, than to stop the brutal wholesale killing of just people. Remember, Trump is a very tough individual, and kind of very martial in some of his aspects of how he comes across and how he comports himself. He's not a warmonger. The last thing he wants to do is pull the trigger and start killing people. And that, I think the American people should be, we saw that in the first term, particularly with that, he's all about balance and reciprocity. When Bolton wanted to go in and blow guys up, send missiles into Persia again for some sort of violation in among our Navy, I will tell people, having been a naval officer, having been on a destroyer in the Persian Gulf and in the North Arabian Sea, you do not understand. This is like being on the moon. It is so barren, so hostile, and it's such huge scale. Military activity is very tough for the United States. The logistics chain is, you're at the ends of the earth to support this. And anything that would happen in Persia this is not Iraq. And this is not Afghanistan. This is an ancient civilization. It is so hostile and barren to even get there. If we get sucked into a shooting war there, we're going to be there for 10 years and you're going to lose 50 to 100,000 American combat troops. And that's why there's so many other remedies to do it. And that's why I think President Trump, who's adamant about this, has to be supported.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode. And for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.